Hi there folks, welcome back to the Abby and Andy Fishing channel. I hope you're doing really well. Huge welcome in particular to all of you people who subscribed after the last video we put up, the small stream video. It really has caught people's imaginations, that one, it seems to be. We had a lot more subscribers from that video than we would normally expect, so hopefully you guys enjoy what we're going to do today. It's on a theme, but a little bit different. I've actually come out today up to the Haddon Estate stretch of the Derbyshire Derwent. Really beautiful game fishing river. For me, the sort of underrated river in Derbyshire. It's always been the poorer sister of the Wye and the Dove, but actually it's a really pretty river in fantastic landscape. I really like the Derwent, and it's a particularly good grayling fishery. Unfortunately, because of this winter, because of the weather we've had, because of all the water, I've not been able to get up and fish it much. It looks like we're going to have a little spell at the end of the season here where the weather calms down, and I've got quite a lot of guiding work coming up on here, so I thought today I'd come along, I'd do a little bit of fishing, see if I can find these fish again, and I'd bring you guys along just in case anything happens. I've got two rods with me. I've got a 10-foot 2-weight Nymphing rig, nice soft rod, absolutely spot on for your grayling fishing, and I've got a 10-foot 3-weight indicator fishing rig for fishing the slacks and the eddies. On the subject of slacks and eddies, I've got a feeling that's where most of the fish are going to be. It was a pretty cold night last night. We've had a relatively mild week or so, but last night it went really cold. Even when I got in the car earlier, it was still only 2 degrees. It definitely went below freezing because both the cars were frozen this morning. So chilly one last night, and it probably means that the water temperature have dropped, and those fish that might have been in feed lines have moved to the slacks, moved to the eddies, moved to the edges of the feed lines, and we're going to pick them up on that indicator rig. As ever, I'm fishing like little fly patch here. Not a huge selection of flies, but total favourites on my part. Flies that I just trust to catch me fish everywhere. Little bit of tippet, few bits and pieces to keep me out of trouble, but fishing very light today. You don't need heaps of kit to catch these fish. Weather forecast is a little bit on and off for the day. There is some rain forecast mid-afternoon. It's about 10:30 now. I am ready to crack on. We'll go and find some fish, and hopefully we can find a few before that rain starts. Let's go and see what the Derwent's got to offer today. Righty, first pool of the day, and as I said at the start, we're going to be looking for slacks and seams. I don't think we're going to find fish in feed lines, but it hasn't been so cold. I've got a lovely slack above me here, just going for the next 30-40 yards. Most of the feed line is the far side, but actually the inside half is pretty much a slack with a little bit of feed line going through it. I decided to start on the indicator rig first because of the pace of the water. If I decide that the water's too quick for this, or if it's not working out, I've got the Nymphing rig right behind me. But to start with, 2-fly indicator rig. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but just in case, for the indicator fishing, 9 times out of 10 I actually fish the heavier fly on the top dropper. The reason for that is it's going to drag the other fly down anyway, and if you've got the heavier fly on the point, it's going to be hitting the bottom more often. It is more likely to drag your indicator under falsely without it being a fish, so I much prefer to have that top dropper being the heavier fly. So top dropper is a 3.5mm, and it's the caddis grub from our trout pack. The point fly is the pink dub grub from our Clearwater grayling pack. I'm going to fish this at fairly short range. You'll see I'm not really fly casting at all. This is more of a lob to start with. Fairly short range, and I just want to search the sort of inside quarter of the river. You can see from the reaction of the indicator, the way it moves on the surface, that those flies are just touching the bottom. Oh, that went under. That looked like a fish just touching the bottom, which means I've got the depth about right. Okay, only a dozen casts in, and I've done the first piece of rigging of the day. It's not necessarily rigging. Obviously, we're fishing a floated leader, actually in this instance, a poly leader, and floating fly line. And it wasn't floating, it was sinking. So really important when you're fishing a technique that involves controlling an indicator or controlling a dry fly. Just make sure everything's floating. It's much easier to mend and readjust if everything's on the surface to start with. Oh, there we go. Just behind me, little grayling to start the day. Just might even have been on the swing. That I'm not going to use the net for this one. Might even have been on the swing. That indicator just ducked under. That's the first one of the day on that pink dub grub. Record breaker. Hey, it's the hardest fish of the day always. Once you get that first one out of the way, the rest of them are easy. Hopefully. Yeah, so quite a first sort of nearly 10 minutes there. Only that one take that I could really properly have a strike at. There could be lots of things going on there. I could have the wrong presentation, I could have the wrong flies, there might just not be any grayling in front of me in this area. One thing's for sure, 10 minutes fishing is too quick to be able to make any big deductions. One thing I have done is just change that point fly. I talked about it. I have changed from the pink dub grub down to a smaller deep purple, something a little bit natural. Water clarity is pretty good actually. We're about a mile down from where the River Wye flows into the Derwent. And the Wye is clear at the moment, as is the Lathkill, which is flown into the Wye. So water clarity is all right, it's pretty good. We might not need the crazy colours today, we'll sort of see. It's going to be a question of playing around to start with. Lovely thick seam just sort of in front and ahead of me here. This looks like exactly the kind of place we should be finding Grayling at this time of year in these sort of temperatures, these water conditions. Really, really hopeful that we could get a few out of this one. That's fish right down the inside. Crikey, that's taken a little bit of gouging out there. That's really quiet first 15 minutes or so. What have we got here? Really quiet. It's just starting to wonder then about possibly moving on. Don't know what this is yet. It could be a trout. Could be a trout. We'll see. Yeah, just in my head then I was thinking maybe I've just got the spot completely wrong, because I don't feel like I'm fishing that badly. Flies, I've made a fly change, something a little bit different. Finally it's gone, but yeah, I'm increasingly thinking that this probably isn't the Grayling we were hoping for. And indeed it's not. That is a Bruni down the inside. Okay. Right, we'll get him unhooked, pop that deep purple straight out, get him back, and we'll just have another couple more minutes here. I might even try one last fly change. See if we can find something a bit more Grayling and a bit less spotty, because that is most definitely the wrong species of fish. Right, so I've made a fly change. I've actually put the red worm on. And I'm finding more and more these days, this is what I use the worm patterns for. If I've gone through a pool with the more natural stuff, there's a fish straight away. If I've gone through a pool with the more natural stuff and not picked up a take, I tend to then put the squirmy through it just very quickly. And as you can see there, that's come from a spot that we've already covered really well. It is a Grayling, it's quite a nice one as well. That's come from a spot that we've already fished quite well with the natural stuff, and that's first cast, second cast we've picked this fish up. I find it works most effectively for me personally on the days when they're not really feeding. I find on the days when the fish are really on it, that squirmy isn't quite as effective. Whereas on the days when they're sort of switched off and they're not looking that interested, all of a sudden that worm can change your day. And you can see there, we've done 20 minutes worth of fishing there for one Grayling, had 2 casts with the red worm, and we've put one in the net. Yeah, nice fish as well. That worm just fell out, but they'll do. There is nothing wrong with catching those all day. Maybe we just stick around here for a few more minutes with the worm. Amazing how quickly that thing can change a pool, change a session. So I don't like leaning on it too hard, but as you've just seen there, that's a piece of water that we've covered really effectively with the different flies that we've used so far. And within seconds of putting that worm on, we've found a fish that we hadn't found previously. Like I say, I find it tends to work at its best on the days when they're not really feeding, or at moments during the day when they're not really feeding, which sort of worries me because I've definitely covered that fish and he didn't eat the natural stuff. Does that mean they're not really at it at the moment? Might explain the slow start, that's for sure. So off the back of that, we'll give this area just another 5 minutes, drift through the same sort of spots we already have, but with this worm on. If we can pick a couple up, great. If not, we'll keep moving, we'll keep searching for these fish. Right, so just snagged something up on the bottom. It's brought me a bit further upstream. I don't even know if you guys can see me through this tree, although wearing this wading jacket you should be able to see me from space. So I'll just give this a couple of minutes, see if we can find one just in this area up here that I hadn't fished previously. Oh, I've struck the wrong way. Oh, there's a fish as well. I don't know why I didn't strike that way. I've got plenty of space. Oh, I was just sort of mid-mend. I spend my entire working week telling people not to do that. I did exactly the wrong thing. You would always want to strike downstream. It's a pretty safe assumption that when these fish eat, or at least when you see the indication, they are facing upstream. So if you strike upstream, you pull it straight out the front of the mouth. But if you strike downstream, or in and down, you pin him in the corner. And that fish there was a great example. I had him on briefly, but couple of little shakes of their head, couple of beats of the tail, and he was off again, and that was all because I struck the wrong way. So I'm only 20 yards above where I was just. But I've got another lovely seam here that's caused by this tree that's fallen in. Just creates this nice mulchy area just in front of me that again looks absolutely perfect. As you come up this pool, it gets a bit more gravelly as well. I can already feel the riverbed below my feet is just a little bit harder, and again Grayling quite like that gravel, so maybe they weren't down at the back, maybe they're just a touch further up. We'll soon find out. I've taken the worm off. I like to use that thing as an emergency fly rather than just lean on it all day. I've actually put a contrast red tag on the point now. I've kept the same top dropper. Stuck with the indicator as well, just wiring the seams relatively slow. Might have a quick mooch with the Euro rig just in this spot in a few minutes if this doesn't work. I've got a nice feed line coming straight past me that actually I think will fish better on that Euro rig than it will on the indicator. We'll see what happens. Nothing doing yet. Very quiet. Makes me wonder just how cold it was up here last night. Certainly wasn't warm when I stepped out of the house, but that was relatively late in the morning. Very quiet from an area that actually, even though I haven't been able to fish this place much so far this season, from an area that historically I've done pretty well from. Keep going like this, that worm could be going on again pretty soon. There we go. Wow, again, that's taken a lot to get that fish to eat. Right at my feet, pretty much. I was sort of in a bit of a daze then. I was drifting off a little bit. It is a Grayling. Could be on the top dropper as well, actually. That it is a Grayling, literally as close to me as that drift would have ever come. One on the top dropper is nice. We've got a lot of space to play this fish, but we'll do our best with what we've got. Yeah, it is a Grayling. These fish are really taking some gouging out. Again, obvious signs here. These fish aren't really on the feed. I mean, I've had nearly 5 minutes worth of drifts there before I've managed to convince this fish to eat. Got him in the end though. Alrighty, that's the hook out. Come on, bud. Not quite as big as the previous one, but we'll take him. We'll take him. Let's get you back. Off you go. Okay, this might sound a bit odd, but off the back of that, I've actually made a fly change. I've not changed the fly that just caught the fish, obviously. But I have changed the point fly. I would look at a situation like that and think, well, that fish has just had to swim past the point fly to get to the top dropper, which means that point fly perhaps just isn't what they want. So I've gone for a real blockbuster kind of visible point fly with the spangle shrimp. Just worth a look. It's certainly going to get seen. Oh, what's that? Yeah, there we go. That's first cast with that change, and that's on the point fly. Interesting. Interesting. Nice change that. It doesn't always work, but it is nice when you change a fly and get a take immediately. Right, that spangle shrimp just popped out, but he was on the point fly, definitely. He is causing me some grief just getting him out the net. Again, not a big one, but a nice little change that's worked immediately. There we go. So that's worked nicely. So again, that's an area that we drifted well for a good 5 minutes, not really had the rewards for it, changed to something a bit more visible and immediately got the take. That happened with the worm as well, so it could just be that brighter or bulkier or more obvious flies are perhaps the order of the day. I do like it when you make a change and it works. Do you know, in isolation, actually, it might not be anything that I've changed that's worked there. That fish could have eaten anything else. We'll find out if we get a couple more fish, but just makes you feel a little bit better about yourself if you make a change and it pays off straight away. Okay, so as I said, there was no guarantee that making that change was going to be an absolute game changer. It caught me one fish, but so far it hasn't caught me another one in the next few minutes. I think what I'm going to do actually in a second is pick that Euro rig up and just give that a fish through here. I think with a heavier point fly on the Euro rig, I'll be able to slow the flies down slightly. It might give me a slightly different looking presentation. You know, again, if it's been cold and these fish aren't willing to move very far, maybe just being able to pin these flies down a little bit harder might be an advantage. Obviously with the suspension rigs, with the indicator rig like we've got here, they're always sort of being pulled along by that indicator to a certain extent. Whereas with the Euro rig, a heavier point fly is likely to just slow my drifts down. In fact, yeah, I'm going to do exactly that now. I'm going to pick up the other rig. As ever, I'm using the French leader outfit from our Euro Nymphing in a Box kit. This is the high-vis version. We've got a 3-fly rig on here. On the top dropper, I've got the orange collar hairs here. On the middle dropper, I've got the baby pink. And on the point fly, I've got the 4mm point fly from our Grayling packs, just hoping that's going to get us down fast enough, give us a bit of contact with the riverbed, perhaps just gives a slightly different looking presentation to these fish, because I do think they're there, I really do. Gives me a bit more possibility to try and catch these fish on the swing as well. Never quite as happy fishing on the swing with an indicator rig, because obviously that indicator is there dragging on the surface. It's obvious it's going to look a little bit weird to the fish, whereas with the Euro rig I think that swing fishes much more effectively. I might just move upstream again slightly onto the shallower flat at the top of this run. Probably somewhere between knee and waist deep. It's a bit... Oh, there's a fish. That came out of absolutely nowhere. I hate to think how many times I've put flies over that area. Out of absolutely nothing. All of a sudden, I'm attached to what feels like quite a nice Grayling again. Just when I was talking about moving upstream, we found one. It's not quite as big as I thought. This lovely soft 2/8 rod makes everything feel like a monster. What are you on? On the top dropper, is it? Yeah, it is. That's on the orange collar hairs here, on the top dropper. Okay, maybe we have a couple more casts here. Come on, buddy, let's get you untethered. Yeah, okay. Maybe we have a couple more casts here. Let's just see if we can find another one. It is just going to be a few more minutes though. I'm quite keen on covering some ground. I want to try and find a few more fish in a few more areas. I'm confident these fish are here. They're just really taking some convincing at the moment to get them to eat. That's another instance of a fish that I've covered so many times, and it's only just on that drift decided to have a bit of one of those 3 flies. So all sort of points here at the moment to a river full of cold fish that aren't really feeding. I can tell you from having unhooked a few now, that water is absolutely brassic. There's one, little bit further up. That was nice. Real like conventional piece of Euro Nymph in that. Cast up above me, and I'm assuming from this that this might not be a Grayling. Let's see what happens here. Could be. Could just be a big fish that got itself in that flow line there. Still not seen the fish yet. It's pretty weird light today. It's quite flat light. Can't really see a whole lot below the surface even with polarised lenses on. What are you? It looked Grayling then for a second. Then it looked a bit brownie-ish as well. What are you? Yeah, that looks like a Brunski to me. That's not the one we're after, but it might be the one that we move on this spot from. He's taken that baby pink on the middle dropper. Get you straight back, buddy. Yeah, I think we'll have a move on from that one. Sort of feel like there are fish here. If we keep covering some ground, we can keep finding more fish in other spots, I reckon. Okay, so we've fished for almost an hour there in total. You just have 5 minutes in that run behind us that actually looks quite gentle on the screen just there, but believe me, when you get in it, it's not. I've actually walked out of it because it's too much to stand in. There's a great little pocket over on the far side, just about there. Nice little seam that I really wanted to fish. There's always Grayling there, but I can't get across to it. It's just not safe, so I've backed out of that one and we'll go and find some more spots. I certainly don't feel like I've got it cracked yet today, but I think there's 2 things straight away from here. Sort of ringing the changes with the flies has worked quite consistently. Every time I've made a fly change, it seems I've put a fish in the net pretty quickly, even though it perhaps hasn't resulted in more than one. And secondly, the importance of having the 2 different presentation styles, the indicator nymphing and the Euro nymphing. They make those flies sit and move in the water completely differently, and I feel like if I'd have only had one of those, I'd probably only have caught half the fish that I have caught. So I really like having both of those rigged with me. I wouldn't be without either of them, put it that way. It has just started dribbling. Literally while I'm talking, we've just got a little bit of rain falling, and actually looking down the valley, there is a bit of weather coming upstream here, so I could be in trouble. Hopefully it's not going to be too bad, and we've got plenty of time to catch some more Grayling. Let's go and find them. Okay, so a bit of a mooch upstream and a lovely fishy looking spot here. It's actually sort of 2 different spots in one. So obviously you can see the main feed line coming down here, where you can see where the bulk of the bubbles are coming down, and you know that's where I'd expect fish to be feeding, particularly on the bugs that are hatching. That's a large dark olive just at the end of my rod tip trying to hatch off. So if there's food coming down the river, I'd expect to find fish in the feed line feeding, but actually just beyond it there is a lovely sort of slack seam over there. It's not quite slack, that's probably the wrong word, but it slows down considerably, and that's where I'd expect to find the grayling at the moment if they're not really feeding. Now that hatch could make a difference here, that could pull some fish into the feed lines. I'm actually already thinking about fly changes. I've got the pink collar pheasant tail with me, and that would do a good job of imitating a hatch in large dark. To start with, we're on the Euro rig when we're in the feed line, and that's immediately found a snag. We're off. But as we go across the river here, if we can go across the river, we'll probably end up using the indicator and working really hard with the men's to get some good drifts in that slightly slacker water. Ideally, I'd actually like to fish this spot from the other bank, but with the river at the height it is at the moment, I can't get over to that far side. Might be able to perhaps cross upstream and come back down. I would definitely much rather be fishing this from the other side. See what happens. It's a good hatch, all of a sudden there are lots of olives coming off. Well, by the magic of editing, actually I'm now stood almost exactly on the opposite bank. It's where I was just stood, kind of gone up and around and managed to get to the other side of the river, and I'm much happier over here. I've got some shelter from the wind here, I've got some shelter from that heavy flow here, I've got the seam in front of me. Everything feels pretty good. I've picked the indicator rod up first. I must admit I'm already questioning that. I might well be better off Euro nymphing this. Give the indicator a fair shake for a couple of minutes and just see what happens. Still got the same top drop run as before, I've still got that caddis grub on before, but I've changed the point fly to the pink collar pheasant tail from our clear water pack. Size 14 that thing, it's a fair old chunk, and it does a great job of imitating large dark olive, brook dun nymphs, stuff like that. With us having a pretty good hatch going on at the moment, it feels like the right sort of fly to be chucking. That fish? Yeah, oh it was. I just changed the depth of the rig. I've been fishing here for 2 or 3 minutes and hadn't had a take. And to be honest, I was a little bit confused about the whole thing, so I just put an extra foot on the depth of the rig. First cast I've had a take. It was only a small fish, I could feel that little beat to the tail. But instantly, after making a change once again, we've had some sort of result. Sort of wish I knew what fly it was on at the very least. It'd be nice to know what worked and what didn't. Because the important thing is that something on here is right. Trying to figure out which bits. Gone a little bit darker and cloudier in the last 20 minutes or so. There's a temptation here to flip to a slightly more visible point fly again. I'm half thinking putting the worm back on. I wouldn't mind just getting a fish in the net. We had a pretty good first 45 minutes, and then the next half an hour or so really hasn't been that great. Not put a fish in the net. Wouldn't mind getting that net wet again in a minute. Well, make no mistake about it, the last hour has been tough. I've fished both sides of the river with both rigs. We've had rain, we've had wind. I've gone through fly changes. I've pretty much done everything that I feel like I should need to do. I haven't actually put a fish in the net since the last one you guys saw on film. It's yeah, a really weird change. We had a bit of rain earlier, it went a bit dark and the sun came out again. It's sort of been on and off the whole time. I've been fishing good water, and hopefully I found some good water here, because that's taken no more than a couple of drifts, although I'm pretty sure this isn't a grayling from the way it's fighting. Let's get him on the reel just in case. I mean, it could be, but I reckon that's probably a trout zooming around. Yeah, it is indeed. It is indeed, although I will say this is as close as I've got a fish to the net in the entire time. I did lose a trout earlier, and I bumped off what I'm pretty sure was a small grayling, but other than that, in probably 60 minutes in the water, I've got basically nothing to show for it, apart from one small out of season brownie. I feel like I fished good water as well. Finding those slacks and seams, everything looks pretty good. That hatch finished when the rain started, that was a shame, because I felt like that could possibly bring out a few more grayling to the feed lines, but it didn't happen. Just doesn't have that sort of fishy feel that first hour had. I was really confident in that first hour. I just don't feel the same anymore. nothing could change that, like catching a couple of grayling pretty soon. A little bit of rain starting to fall again. I mean, really, it could be that the areas are fished, or perhaps I'm not fishing as well as I was at the start, but really the big change in the day has been that rain that rolled in earlier. Wasn't heavy, don't get me wrong, this is already as heavy as it was earlier, but it sort of just felt like it cooled the day down a little bit, and I don't know, it just doesn't feel quite as right anymore, so it's quite hard to quantify. Oh, there's a fish, crikey. There are some fish in here. That feels a bit more grayling as well. I'm stood on my tiptoes at the moment. That feels like a grayling. Just a couple of minutes ago, just made the rig slightly deeper. Just put a bit more depth on there. I wonder if that's made a difference. Could be a good one, this. Might just get him on the reel. Pretty sure this is a grayling. Never know with these soft rods, do you? Could be a little guy pulling hard. Might not even be a grayling, actually. That could be a trout. It is a trout, but it's not the species we're all thinking. I'm pretty sure it's is it? I'm not confused myself now. No, yeah, it is. That's a wild rainbow trout. So we can sort of catch these without too much guilt at this time of year, because they don't spawn until the spring. They are, strictly speaking, out of season. But, yeah, I thought one of these might appear at some point. So we'll treat him as if he was a brownie. Not take him out of the water. Really pretty fish. Wouldn't mind showing you this one again in a month or so's time. Typically, just as I was about to show you the fish, the battery on that GoPro just died. Right, one more move. Okay, so I've taken that battery dying on that rainbow as a bit of a hint there to move on. Interesting to know, actually, the camera batteries that are used last for about an hour each. So in the first hour today, I think we had half a dozen grayling. In the second hour, we haven't put a single one in the net, which is really frustrating. So I've brought myself up to a spot that, to be honest, I probably wasn't going to fish today, but I've decided to come up and just have a couple of wings around here, just to see if I can reassure myself that actually it's not me, and that the fish are there and they are there to be caught. I've just not been fishing possibly good areas, or just honestly, as much as anything, my ego's taken a bit of a dent. So I've come to a spot where I know there would almost always be a couple of fish kicking around, just to see if I can dig them out here. And that's taken all of 2 casts to get this one to eat that orange collar hares here. Again, we've got a nice seam in front of us here. That's the reason these fish are here. He's just gone underneath the net. We've got a nice seam in front of us, and that's the reason why these fish like to sit here. They can dip in and out of this seam. There's usually a couple to be caught. Well, this fish has done a pretty good job of protecting my ego there, because that has been a tough middle hour. It turns out I'm not completely useless. Where are you? Thank you very much, chap. Let's see if we can find a couple of his buddies. Yeah, so maybe it was just that I was fishing the wrong areas, or I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of, because I'm not going to fish here particularly differently to how I fish there. Obviously on the Euro rig I've got a 3-fly rig, 4mm point fly on the point, and a baby pink on the middle dropper, and a orange collar hares here on the top dropper, and that fish there took the top dropper, which is interesting. Come fair distance off the riverbed to eat that, I imagine. There we go, nice rattly takedown there. Took a little bit of encouraging, that one. They're certainly not hanging themselves today. Relatively tough day, I'd say. The middle hour was brutal, but at least we've found a couple now. Another grayling, and again on the top dropper, on that orange collar hares here. That's interesting. I wonder what that's about. That's two on the top dropper. Can't explain it. We'll see if there's more of a pattern. 2 in 2 is interesting though. Lovely rattly take. The indicator never really stopped properly as such. It's one of the rare ones that you actually feel more than you see. It's almost as if the fish took it facing downstream and kind of kept swimming with it. Just a couple of little rattly taps rather than a big stop on the indicator. I keep making my way across here. There's a flow line that comes off this tree on my side that's speeding things up a bit, and then obviously main feed line on the far side, but there is a slightly slower bit of water in the middle third, about there. That's exactly where he was. Not sure if that's a trout or a grayling. Tumbling like a grayling. I thought initially trout, tumbling around like a grayling. Yeah, that was in that slightly, I mean, it's not loads slower, it's just a little bit slower, but it's in between the two seams. It is a grayling. This is more like it, and it looks like, again, on the top dropper. Come on. There we go. Falling out in the net, but that is 3 out of 3 on the orange collar hairs here. Must be a little bit of a pattern happening here. Nice. Yes, I was just saying about that, about that little slightly slower slot down the middle, and that's pretty much bang on. Any further across than that and it starts to speed up again, but it's definitely slower. I didn't feel any riverbed on that. Let's try that one again. Might have been a touch too far across that time, maybe that's the one. Slight temptation here to go heavier on the point fly. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that 4.5mm point fly back on, just see if that makes a difference. I always worry that the size of these beads always sounds a bit trifling, you know. To someone who doesn't do a lot of this, you think, how much difference can 0.6 of a millimetre actually make to the weight of a bead? It's an enormous amount. I bet you it's not far off twice as heavy as that 4mm bead. It's going to get you down a lot faster. Yeah, doesn't look like we're going to get that 4 fish out of this little pocket here. Perhaps if we went through the fly changes again we might, but I think I'd rather move down and fish a slightly different area 20 yards down than just keep walloping on this same area. Okie doke, so we're about 30 yards down from where we were just fishing. It's a little bit shallower down here, so the first thing I've done is change that point fly to a deep purple 3.8mm bead. It's a nice skinny fly that, so it drops pretty quick even for its bead weight. We're sort of going to fish our way back up towards where I was just. Nice seams down the inside. It's not quite as fast down here or as deep. Could be fish absolutely anywhere through here. So I'm going to do a bit more searching. Not changed the other 2 flies. That orange collar hairs here seems to be doing a real job for me at the moment, so that's staying on. Baby pink's an old favourite, so that is definitely staying on for the moment, but we'll see what happens. Let's pick a way through here and see if we can find a few more. Okay, well all we can do here is keep working up, keep seeing if we can find them. Obviously starting in the slacks again, that's where I'm expecting them to be. Not quite gone to plan so far today, but I know what this place is like. You could have a group of 20 fish, you can catch half of them if you catch it right, so you've always got a chance on here. Good numbers in the Derwent. Right, continuing to work up. I'm almost back to where I started earlier, and I'm just going to indulge myself here for 5 minutes. I picked up the indicator rig, mostly because it's got a squirmy on the point, and I just want to put this worm through here and see if it makes any difference. It's not bad water speed for it. Just give it a go for a couple of minutes. Well, crikey, I mean, I've fished for nearly 5 minutes with this red worm on, and I can't even get a take on this. This very much feels like the end of the day. It's gone cold, we're losing the light, and all things sort of point to the day being pretty much done, to be quite honest. Oh, there's one. we finally found one. Again, put a lot of casts through that area. It's not like I hadn't fished it. No surprises for guessing what he's eating. He's chomped that red worm. That's quite a nice fish, actually. Yeah, he'll do. He'll do. Okay. We can still do it. Red worm just on the end of the snout. Yeah, that's a bit more like it. One more of those and that would be me done. Well, my one last fish there didn't materialise in the next 5 minutes, and I've decided that actually that will probably do for today. We always try and make sure that the videos that we put out are sort of warts and all, and I feel like today is probably more warts than anything else really. That's been a really tough one. My sort of overriding impression from the day is that actually these fish aren't really on it. That middle hour was bizarre. Absolutely nothing in terms of grayling for 60 minutes for me on here is a really strange one. I like to think I know this place pretty well. I did try and fish a few spots that maybe I don't fish as often and perhaps they didn't produce, but even spots that I do fish regularly, you know, spots that I know really well, haven't been quite as productive as I might have expected. Really glad I bought both rods. I think that's a really important one, to have both that indicator and the Euro rig. You've seen there, even just in that last pool there, just chopping and changing in between the two can provide a slightly different presentation. Those fish see those flies moving differently. It can make the difference between catching a fish and not. On the subject of flies, as ever, all the flies that we've used today are in our grayling packs, both the clear water and the coloured water grayling pack. They're all on the web shop, so please do follow this little linky just here if you're interested in getting yourself some new flies. Same with the Euro Nymph in the box kit. Actually, we've got those in stock coming up for the trout season as well. Folks, I'm going to get away because it's actually just started to drizzle a little bit again. It looks like we've got some more water coming. Do fill that comment section with lots of advice. Tell me exactly what I've done wrong. Tell me what you'd have done differently, because you'd have caught more fish than me today. Guys, thank you very much for watching. IB and I are going to see you people again very soon. Some more fishing, some more grayling, some more blanking and some more stuff. Take care, folks. Bye bye.